Hi, my name is Shawnee.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Faith.
And we're doing adolescent sleep patterns. Sleep deprivation can take a toll on teenagers' daily lives. One of the main factors of lack of sleep during adolescence is early school schedules. The teenage years are a critical stage in development, and skipping out of sleep can be dangerous. The National Institute of Health say that teenagers need at least 9 hours of sleep every night. Only 9% of high school students actually meet that recommendation, and 20% sleep less than 5 hours per night. 90% of high school students are chronically sleep deprived, according to a 2014 survey. With early school times, it can increase teenager stress levels and decrease school performance. Students undergo phase delay, which means they have the tendency of falling asleep and waking up at later times. Teens fall asleep typically after 11 p.m. or even later because of the change of their internal clocks. Lack of sleep can affect mental health, issues with learning behavior, substance abuse, higher risk of obesity, and dependence on sleep and anxiety medications. And all that can affect school and extracurricular activities and performance. It is said that if teenagers started school as late as 8:30 a.m., they would be more awake, alert, and have a higher performance in school in extracurricular activities. So what can we do to help adolescents obtain more sleep? One suggestion for parents was to create an effective school schedule for their kids. And the next one is suggested in the video that's next.
When you're in high school, you're tired, you sleep a lot, you're awake at all the wrong times, and to top it all off, school starts at the butt crack of dawn. The struggle is real, you guys. Hey everyone, Lacey Green here for D News. When I was in high school, the 5:30 a.m. alarm was the bane of my existence. The bus left at 6:20, and school started at 7. Meanwhile, I wasn't able to fall asleep till like midnight. A lot of medical experts agree that teenagers need 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep every night, yet most high school students in the U.S. only get 7 hours or less. The National Sleep Foundation found that 60% of teens under 18 feel tired throughout the day, with 15% of students falling asleep in class at least once during the year. Just like being hungry, being sleepy isn't exactly a helpful way to learn stuff. Although research agrees, the sleep deprivation problem among students causes real problems. When scientists at the University of Minnesota observed schools that pushed their start time to 8:30, magic happened. Students got 5 more hours of sleep a week. The researchers saw an overall improvement in student attendance, fewer tardies, they got into fewer car accidents. There was a substantial drop in rates of depression in the student body. And, kind of an important thing, they got better grades and remembered more information. What's often overlooked in thinking about school start times is that teenage bodies have a different internal clock than full-grown adults. Your biological clock determines how much sleep you need and when your peak alertness and sleepiness will be. So this clock changes over the course of your life. Researchers at Brown University found that in teens, the internal clock is on phase delay. In phase delay, teenagers need more sleep and they naturally fall asleep later and wake up later. During the time older adults start to get tired around 9 or 10, teens actually feel a little more alert, with sleepiness typically setting in between 11 and 12. So by starting school at 7 and finishing around 2, you're fighting nature, and you'll never win against nature. So, hey America, why are we doing things that make approximately 0 sense? Earlier this week, U.S. Education Secretary Arne Duncan asked the same question. He made a statement in Washington strongly encouraging school districts to push back school start times to 8:30 or 9 a.m. He said there's lots of research and common sense indicating that teens are struggling, and yet he's preaching to the choir. 80% of adults polled by the NSF think school should start later than 8 a.m. So what's the holdup? School districts are reluctant to make it happen because of all those pesky logistical details. Delaying start time would mean pushing bus times back, coaches will have to rethink scheduling practices, parents who are arranging transportation and childcare will have to sort all of that out, and it may complicate the situation for teens with after-school jobs and extracurriculars. So pushing back might be kind of a pain, but it seems like a small price to pay considering the facts. That's my take anyway. Do you think we should push back school starting times? Let me know what you think down below or on Twitter at DNews, and I'll catch you next time.
Those are my references.
Okay, I'll be talking about the blue spectrum light. In this case, blue spectrum light is basically any light that comes from a phone screen, TV, computer, things, or tablet, anything like that. So as Shani kind of mentioned a little bit, adolescents are faced with different tasks and responsibilities every day that can lead to a lack of sleep. It could be homework, sports, chores, family life, things like that. But another thing that could add on to that is, according to the Pew Research Center, 72% of teens bring their mobile device into the bedroom, including the 28% who leave them on during their sleep. So this could be another thing that adds on to an adolescent's lack of sleep or a messed up sleep schedule. Sleep is like a balm for the brain. The better you sleep, the more clearly you can think while you're awake. So on the left side, we have a picture that represents a teen that got a good night's sleep, wasn't distracted or up on her phone or anything like that at night. And then on the right is a teen with distractions, not only keeping her from going to sleep, but what also can disrupt the sleep cycle is if the adolescent is asleep and their notifications go off and they check their phone, and that basically messes with their brain and the hormones that get released to make them sleepy or fall asleep. 55% of American adolescents access the internet, and 24% play computer games after 9 p.m. So generally, around 9 p.m. more or so is when adolescents should go to sleep to get enough sleep at night. Mobile use at bedtime has been found to increase tiredness. And in this next video, it'll explain a little bit more about blue spectrum light and its effect on sleep cycles.
The impact of screens on sleep. People are exposing their eyes to this stream of photons from these objects that basically tells your brain, stay awake, it's not time to go to sleep yet. So it's 10 p.m., it's 11 p.m., it's 12 p.m., you're checking for email, you're looking for text, you're doing all these things. That light beams in you. It tells your brain, don't secrete melatonin yet, it's not time for sleep. And you're up at 12:30, you're up at 1, you're checking some more because you're up after all, why shouldn't you check? Now, you go to bed at 1, you wake up at 6 to get ready for work, that's 5 hours of sleep. We now know that what sleep is likely doing is allowing your active neurons to rest, which is fine. But more than that, the supportive cells, called glial cells, are now cleaning up the toxins that the neurons produce. And if you don't get from 7 to 9 hours of sleep, you just get 5, the toxins remain there for over 95% of people. There are a small percentage of people who are genetically different. They don't need that much sleep. But for the vast majority of us, we need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So even though it's like a badge of courage, I only had 3 hours of sleep last night and I'm working today, it makes your attention falter, your memory is impaired, your ability to think through problems is challenged. Your insulin even, that helps regulate your metabolism, is turned upside down, so you're more likely to gain weight from what you eat and eat more. And then, if that weren't enough, it's actually toxic to the connections in your cells. So, in your brain. So what you want to do is prioritize sleep. Shut off your screens, let's say by 9 p.m. Give yourself an hour at least before you're going to bed, and keep those screens off. It's a serious, serious problem for everyone, and we can do something about it by actually actively deciding that's what we're going to do, is take care of this aspect of the digital domain.
So yeah, as he touched on the subject, as he explained, when an adolescent is on a screen or something at night before they go to bed, as he said, that light is making their brain think that it's time to be awake and not go to sleep, which prolongs the time that it takes to fall asleep, or just distracts them overall. In conclusion, the use of technology and the number of devices used in the hour before sleep are significantly associated with problems in daytime function, increased frequency of waking too early, waking unrefreshed, and daytime sleepiness, which is something that definitely affects adolescents, as Shani also mentioned before. And those are my references.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference in sleep patterns between adolescent males and females. So in general, for men and women, men snore more every night, but women have much harder time falling asleep and staying asleep at least one night per week. And I thought that was interesting because I think you think often when people snore that they're not getting good sleep, but a lot of the time those people are the ones that are getting much better and more frequent sleep than those who are waking up all night long. So a little bit more on male sleep patterns. There was a cool study that was done talking about men and women and how often they consume caffeine and how it affects their sleep. And during the teen years, men drink more caffeine and have a harder time sleeping because of it. But only during the teen years. When they move on later in life, men actually fall asleep easier than women. And then adolescent males wake later on school days and they fall asleep more often during class. And then females, girls report waking up after falling asleep more often than boys, so not having a restful sleep during the night. But they wake up earlier on school days than males do on average, and they fall asleep more often on the way home from school, so just a little bit later in the day. And they don't report falling asleep in class as often. And so because of that, and because of some of the things that our whole group has talked about so far, we see that teens aren't getting enough sleep because of the school schedules, because of their habits, because of technology, and that can be super dangerous. So this cool video has kind of some interesting music, but I really like the video because I think it does a super great job explaining why sleep deprivation in teens can be so dangerous. So I thought that it was kind of interesting that at the end of that video, it talks about how there's even like counselors and support groups for sleep deprivation, because I think sometimes, I think we all like joke about being sleep deprived sometimes. And I'm sure that sometimes we all are, but this video talks about how it's actually a serious medical condition and it can be really dangerous when people are consistently deprived of the amount of sleep that they need. And there was a cool study that talked about how sleep deprivation can make your body function the same way as having a blood alcohol content of 0.1. And the legal limit is 0.08. And so if you're driving with a blood alcohol content of 0.08, you're already an intoxicated and dangerous driver. And sleep deprivation makes your body function even worse than that. And it impairs your judgment and your thinking. Your vision can be affected, and you're like a super high risk of falling asleep or like having slurred speech, and your balance is thrown off. And so also that can affect your driving and just decision-making skills in general. And so for teens who are chronically sleep deprived, they're much more likely to experiment with alcohol and drugs to try to cope with those things, and also to participate in risk-taking behaviors and in risky sexual behavior, which I thought all those things were really interesting, because they can cause sleep deprivation, but also sleep deprivation can lead to those behaviors in teens that weren't otherwise already participating in them. And yeah, so the risk-taking behaviors go up as teens lose sleep, which is super dangerous because over 90% of teens in the United States do not get enough sleep every single night. So, and those are my references.